In October 1973, P.J. Vollmer, the Chief of Operations for the Federal Aviation Administration at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, received a visit from Lawrence Coyne, a police officer who was also an Army active duty veteran. After graduating from James Ford Rhodes High School in Cleveland in 1955, Coyne had been commissioned as an officer. He was with Special Forces and was an experienced pilot of both helicopters and aeroplanes. Coyne told Vollmer that he and 3 other reservists had been flying back from Columbus and had not only seen an unidentified flying object but nearly crashed into it. The following is an account of what happened. In Loudonville on October the 18th, 1973, residents in north-central Ohio witnessed strange lights in the sky to the west over Charles Mill Lake. Then at 10:30 p.m. on the same day, Captain Lawrence Coyne, 36, with 19 years flying experience, First Lieutenant Arija Jetsi, 26, a chemical engineer, and Robert Janicek, 23, computer technician, and Sergeant John Healy, 35, a Cleveland policeman, took off from Port Columbus International Airport on a Bell UH-1H Super Huey helicopter on the way to Cleveland. They'd flown to Columbus for the regularly scheduled flight physical, which had finished around 10 p.m, and went directly to the airport. It was a clear, cloudless night with little wind and visibility for 50 miles or more. The helicopter was about 2,500 feet off the ground and flying 90 knots. Shortly after 11 p.m, they were flying north over Charles Mill Lake near Mansfield in north-central Ohio, when Janicek spotted a red light in the east that looked as if it was flying parallel to the helicopter. Coyne initially thought it was a jet and radioed Mansfield to see if there were any aircraft in the air at the time, getting no answer beyond an acknowledgement of their communication. As the object drew closer, they could see directly in front of them, and then Coyne heard Healy say, "Look at that." It was a 60-foot-long, silver cigar-shaped craft flying with the speed of a jet fighter. It immediately caught up with the helicopter. The red light they'd seen was on the front, and on the back was a white light. A green pyramid-shaped beam underneath it illuminated the entire interior of the helicopter as it shone in, almost like it was examining the craft and its crew. Janicek described what appeared to be windows along the top of the dome. The radio then stopped working, and the compass was spinning out of control. Coyne was forced to take evasive action, diving in the helicopter, but the strange craft followed. Coyne and the men braced themselves for impact, and he closed his eyes to await their fate, but there was no crash. Then Coyne realized the helicopter was actually rising more than 3,500 feet above the ground, where it proceeded to drag the helicopter high into the air as a green light scanned the inside. This lasted for about 10 seconds. Coyne said that he felt a bounce, and then the strange craft took off to the northeast, and then, just as fast as the encounter happened, it was all over. The object was obviously satisfied with what it had seen and turned away slowly, then sped up and disappeared out of sight. The helicopter urgently returned to Cleveland, none the worse for wear, with one noticeable exception: the compass was broken and couldn't be fixed. The unit had to be replaced. The next morning, they were shocked to hear that they weren't the only ones, where a military helicopter flying near Mansfield also reported the lights. Shortly after the incident, Coyne looked for anyone that he could officially tell his terrifying ordeal to and visited P.J. Vollmer to talk about their encounter. John Healy noted later that they were all cold sober and in perfect health for the flight, making their account even more believable. Vollmer had no reason to doubt what Coyne had told him, and personally had an extremely high regard for his integrity and capability, even when this story is as unbelievable as the one he was told. He said that in the case of this guy, he didn't know anybody that he would believe anymore. He said that he trusted his judgment without a question of a doubt. He did not know what happened, but he could tell from the tremor of his voice that he was shaken up. One of the other men on the helicopter, John Healy, was also a police officer, a detective in Cleveland. He told the same story to a colleague the same day Coyne was telling Vollmer about it. He claimed that it scared the living hell right out of him, and who, like Coyne, had been a UFO skeptic right up until that night. But the Lawrence Coyne helicopter incident stands out because of the credibility of the witnesses. Coyne later told his story to his cousin, who was a reporter for the Plain Dealer. Plain Dealer is the major newspaper of Cleveland, Ohio, and is a major national newspaper. Coyne also spoke with the famous creator of the TV series The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, to write a documentary. He was also interviewed on the Dick Cavett show that was popular in the 60s and 70s. The Coyne incident is well known in the UFO community and remains one of the most credible accounts of human and military encounters with a UFO. The men in the helicopter went on to have active careers, and their credibility remained beyond reproach after the incident. In fact, the National Enquirer awarded them $5,000 for having the most credible and valuable report of a UFO encounter. In 1978, Coyne testified before the United Nations, attesting to what he saw, saying, "I am convinced this object was real and that these types of incidents require a thorough investigation," and advocating an international effort to maintain order for flyers who might have similar encounters. Over the years, there have been many cases of aircraft being involved with UFOs. One case took place 16 years after the Coyne incident in 1989 in Belgium on the outskirts of Brussels. NATO's radar tracking station had detected an unknown object. Lieutenant Colonel Pierre Billen reported that the object showed up as a small circle with the tail in the lower left quadrant of the radar screen. He stated, "We found the other civilian and military radar sites like Semzog, Verdon, St. Hubert, and they had precisely the same echo at the same place. We were unable to identify this echo as being either enemy or friendly. It was not very clear for us that there was an aircraft." After 4 other radar stations had confirmed the same sighting, the Belgian Air Force immediately deployed 2 F-16s, and their mission was to locate and identify the objects. It did not take long for the pilots to lock on to the object with their onboard radar, but in an instant the object had shot out of range at an incredible rate of speed. Meanwhile, back on the ground, Air Force Major General W.J.L. de Bruer, now totally perplexed, was at a complete loss to explain the encounter, stating, "We measured some exceptional accelerations which cannot be related to conventional aircraft." For the next hour, the object appeared to be toying with the pilots and seemed to be playing cat and mouse with them. Whatever the object was, there was no doubt that it had superior technology. Lieutenant Colonel Billen claimed that each time the pilots locked onto the object, it would quickly shoot out of range. He stated the pilots confirmed that it was impossible for them to accelerate as quickly as the target was doing. Later that night, when the radar footage was analysed, the object could be seen climbing from 7,000 feet to 10,000 feet in a matter of seconds, and in an instant it would plummet 500 feet in 5 seconds before accelerating more than 1,000 miles per hour. They calculated that it was 1.5 times the speed of sound. No human pilot would survive the combination of acceleration and descent. What further baffled them was how was the craft able to exceed the speed of sound without them hearing a sonic boom. Major General de Bruer said that no known aircraft was capable of such acrobatics, stating the data then on all these performances, which were registered during the lock-on of the radar, was totally outside of the normal performance envelope of any airplane. Major General de Bruer claimed that conventional aircraft were no match for the advanced technology his jet fighters encountered, stating, "I think it's our job to try to find out if there is really something in the air and where it comes from, what the origin is and what the intentions are. Indeed, there is something going on in Belgium which is beyond our control." Another incident took place near London's Heathrow Airport. 2 witnesses, Dee Godden, 65, and her husband, Ernest, 64, were near Heathrow Airport and were looking up into the sky at the supersonic jet Concorde. Suddenly, a huge reddish ball appeared in the sky right in front of Concorde's flight path, and they believed there was going to be a terrible collision. But when the Concorde reached the strange object, it flew straight through it. The object looked as if it was observing the jet. The object stayed in the sky for about 17 minutes. At Heathrow Airport, nothing was ever picked up on radar, and the sighting could not be explained. Because the Concorde was recent technology, it appears that our alien visitors were keeping an eye on our technological advances.